Hi folks, you're Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about this two-tier policing. Now, I've covered this before, but it's recently sort of come back into the headlines because in Britain, the government has decided to formalize two-tier justice. So it's not a matter of it's sort of happening, but we pretend it's not happening. It's being formalized that minorities should receive lighter sentencing, and if you actually go through it, should also receive less onerous requirements in their presentation of evidence, or indeed the evidence against them, less onerous requirements than if it's a straight white male. So the only people that would be held to the high legal standard, the only people are straight white males. Everyone else can get a cop-out based on their transgender or they're brown or black or a woman or a lesbian or something like that. So provided you class yourself as anything other than a straight white male, you'll get a more lenient regime. Now, there's this two-tier justice has been around for a while. We can see that all over the world, Black Lives Matter can burn down the building and they get a good behavior bond. But if the straight white guy, yells the N-word in public, then you get a year in prison or something, that sort of thing. Or as we saw in Britain recently, the protests in the Stockport, I think it was, the town of Stockport, that they were treated, the people there, the straight white males were treated very harshly. You talk out against, you put a mean tweet online about, mass migration or something like that, and the police will be knocking on your door, and you too can go to prison. And the regime or the measurement of the crime you've committed can be quite exacting, and the evidence you need to rebut it. So there are various devices used in two-tier policing, and really I need to go through those, I think, because the justice system, the laws are common, so they are kind of, in theory at least, apply to everybody. The penalties are listed. So where are the gaps that the globalists, because the globalists have infected the entire Western judiciary with activists, and the enemy in all Western countries, the enemy is the straight white male, and they're treated as the enemy, and they're dragged through the courts as the enemy. So what are the devices that they use? Well, the first thing they do is they de facto reverse the burden of proof. So we say that you did such and such, and you now have to prove that you didn't do it. Now, that's actually a reversal of the guilty or innocent till proven guilty. They reverse that to guilty till proven innocent. Now, it's not done with absolute formality. They just raise the evidence bar. So I'll go through the mechanics and the process of how they do that. Now, remember, it's an activist judge, an activist prosecutor, so they're activists all over the place. The administrative staff in the court are activists. Everyone's an activist, and they're against you, the straight white male, because all straight white males are fucking Hitler, and we have to, teach them a lesson for their Hitler-esque, attitudes and views. So they're all very committed to getting you, again, the entire legal system has been stacked with activists, so they don't see a problem with this. So if they just disregard the rules of evidence and the burden of proof, well, there's nothing wrong with that because we're fighting Hitler, so we're allowed to do it. Would you give Hitler the legal rights? Now, one of the to me at least, one of the key things about can you be a judge or can you be a legal practitioner, one of the key things is, okay, so the devil is arrested. Let's say the devil's arrested for spitting on the sidewalk, for example, and brought into court. Now, the devil's got there's a lot of prejudice around, so well, who gives a fuck if the devil spat on the sidewalk? It's the devil, for goodness sake. Throw the motherfucker in prison, give him the electric chair, hang him from the, and so on. So, but just specifically on the crime of spitting on the sidewalk. That's what he's been arrested for, spitting on the sidewalk. If the evidence does not support the charge of spitting on the sidewalk, the devil must walk free. Must walk free, because that is the judge. You can't say, that video in, motherfucker, throwing in. No, because that makes you an activist, not a judge who's determining the case based on the facts and the evidence. So the second you say, well, they're straight white male. I mean, they're Hitler. Well, why do we have to give that? Then no, then you don't. You shouldn't be sitting on the bench making judgments of anybody, whether it's spitting on the sidewalk or anything else. The opposite would also be the case. Well, he's a brown, lesbian, transgender. Well, we shouldn't put someone like that in prison under the oppression. And just let him go. And then again, you shouldn't be sitting on the bench. So, that's I guess the ultimate sort of test. But coming back to the mechanics of how this. Now, I've seen this firsthand many times, so I can talk about it with some authority, I guess. But I've witnessed it firsthand. So it goes like this: that the burden of proof is raised. So Billy Bob Smith is accused of such and such rioting or this or protesting, whatever. It doesn't matter. The state. So the state has decided to go after Billy Bob Smith. Now, the state is already, the prejudice is coming, because the state is deciding, well, that Black Lives Matter guy that burned the building, we won't bother prosecuting them. But this white guy who actually didn't commit any crime, somebody said that someone else heard him say that someone else may have said that he used a racist slur. Good enough for us. Let's drag him into court. So already the threshold is lowered. So the straight white guy only has to look sideways and he's getting dragged into court, whereas the Black Lives Matter guy can burn down a whole building and still not get prosecuted. So already we've got the two-tier justices in play. So Billy Bob Smith gets dragged into court. Now he gets accused, whatever he's charged with. He says, well, actually, I've got 10 witnesses that say I wasn't anywhere near the place, so I couldn't have, or I didn't, 10 witnesses say I didn't say anything or didn't do that. So I've got 10 witnesses there, and I have their sworn affidavits, their sworn testimonies here, Your Honor. So this is the first play. This is how they do it. Well, I don't accept any of those sworn testimonies. I will only accept that testimony if those witnesses are in the court right now, this very second. Why don't you? No, I'm not accepting. So the judge just arbitrarily is deciding, straight white guy, I'm not accepting your sworn testimony, even though it's been entered into evidence and all this sort of stuff, all the processes and the filing of the documents has been correct. The judge just arbitrarily says, I'm not accepting that evidence. All 10 of them. Now the judge hasn't even read them. I looked at them, just blanket, not accepting it. So therefore, the straight white guy, Billy Bob Smith, now has no evidence to say he wasn't there. Those 10 witnesses say he wasn't there, but now he's got no evidence. So suddenly he is there now in a legal sense, because he can't prove he wasn't. So that's how they raise the burden of proof, by playing those sort of games. So Billy Bob Smith then says, well, actually, I can bring those 10. I've made some phone calls, Your Honor, and I can get all of those 10 people in the court, this afternoon. And now clearly the judge isn't happy about this. He thought he'd really snookered and really, got cornered Billy Bob Smith. Now that he's got, but he can get. So the judge, it's a recording of all this. If the judge says no, then it would be grounds for an appeal, and this sort of. So the judge is sort of navigating through that, and you can reverse the burden of proof in certain ways, but if you go too far, then obviously you're being hostile to that particular litigant, and that would be grounds for an appeal. So the witnesses then turn up, and then Billy Bob Smith says to the judge, well, I've got the witnesses outside now, Judge. They're ready to come in. Now the judge has to officially give leave to call those witnesses. So, okay, I will now accept the testimony from those witnesses if they'll come in, go into the witness box and give testimony, give evidence. So the judge says, I'll rule on that presently, says the judge. Well, what's the hold up? There's no hold up. and the judge goes off on some other wild bullshit. Then the judge calls the lunch break is a little bit longer. They have some important business to attend to. Then so the judge, so instead of starting at 1:30, the court doesn't reconvene till 3 o'clock. These witnesses that Billy Bob Smith's organised are all milling around. They've got jobs to go to. They've got children to pick up from school. They've got things to do. They're not employees of Billy Bob Smith. So anyway, then the judge goes, okay, I'll rule on that presently. Then at 3 o'clock or 3:30, 4 o'clock, these people have all had to go home. They couldn't wait indefinitely while the judge wouldn't make a decision. Then the judge says, so Mr. Smith, are your witnesses still outside? Well, no, Your Honour, they've all had to go home. I was waiting at the, well, I'll hear their evidence now. The guy, Billy Bob Smith, has just said to the judge they've all had to go home. And then the judge says, I'll hear their evidence now. So this is very deliberate, and judges are doing this sort of stuff all the time, as this is a way they put two-tier justice onto any court case that they hear. So Billy Bob Smith then has the witnesses come back the next day, and then the judge says, well, I'll hear their evidence in the afternoon. And then at 2 o'clock, the judge says, I'm closing the court early today because of important business I have to take care of. I can't hear those witnesses. They'll have to come back at another time. So again, they judge deliberately. So just look at this. The judge says, no, I will not accept the sworn testimony of those witnesses. They have to give the evidence in person. Now, that's a big ask, getting 10 people to turn up in court, and you can't give them a proper time when they can hear. But then the judge, as soon as the judge knows they're outside, which clearly was, they're waiting outside in the just outside the courtroom, the judge says, no, I'm not accepting. I haven't got time to hear them. I won't give you time. I won't give you leave to call the witnesses. And then closes the court early to prevent it again. So by all these devices, which are deliberate, spiteful, petty, envious, devices, by all these devices, the judge is able to prevent evidence from being given for the straight white guy. So then the judge, well, I've heard enough. I don't want to hear any more of this case. Mr. Billy Bob Smith, I'm sentencing you to a year in prison and for doing such and such. And Billy Bob Smith cries out, but I brought the evidence. I wasn't even there. Well, the evidence, I told you that you had to give evidence and the witnesses had to come. They didn't do it. And so the judge has deliberately prevented the witnesses from giving evidence, then says Billy Bob Smith has no evidence, even though the judge has actually struck down the evidence before it's even been heard or tested, struck down the evidence so that it can't even be given. Now, these sort of things are again, these devices, they raise the burden of proof onto the straight white guy. The white guy now has to jump a very high hurdle to prove. The burden of proof is reversed, of course, but he has to jump a very high hurdle now to prove he didn't do it. The state, or whoever's trying to stick it up, the straight white guy, the state must, by contrast, meet a very low burden of proof. It's crazy. You listen to some of these cases where the prosecutor, what evidence do you have, prosecutor, that Billy Bob Smith did this or that? We heard it somewhere. We heard one of our informants mentioned, or we have reason to believe. Oh, that's it. Fact. So there's no ability to test that evidence. Now, if the remember the lawyers that may represent Billy Bob Smith are registered by the state. The government owns their registration papers, in effect. So if the lawyer vigorously defends Billy Bob Smith, calls for a mistrial, gets stuck into the judge for not allowing the witnesses to be heard, this sort of thing, then that lawyer will find themselves an ex-lawyer very quickly. Now, many lawyers depend on government work or the work of NGOs and so on that are funded by the government. So if the lawyer makes does too good a job of defending the straight white guy, then that work will very quickly, the whispers, little cabal whispers will go around, and that lawyer will find themselves suddenly not getting all those juicy contracts. and that nice BMW they're driving is going to very quickly be repossessed and so on. So they're going to rock that boat. They don't want to do it. None of them are in a position where they're going to endanger that sort of lifestyle on behalf of some rando straight white guy. Why should I give a fuck about him? Everyone's against him anyway. I might as well join the pylon. So these are the among the devices. Now it's so stark that you be in court. What court case where a woman had deliberately and willfully, with plenty of witnesses, alienated the children from this is a divorce case, from the father. She didn't kill the family dog, for fuck's sake, and various other things that made her come across as quite an evil and sinister figure. But every bit of evidence that was brought to prove the woman's misbehaviour and demonic sort of disposition, the judge just wouldn't allow it. Would just keep on ruling against it. No, I won't allow that. And would even intercede and say, well, the woman was on the witness stand, don't answer that question. The judge would actually direct the woman not to answer a question that was being argued about this, like kill the family dog and everything. This is how one-sided it is. But the man was held to the highest standard. I mean, if he looked sideways, that was Hitler. And so this is how the activist judges and courts and prosecutors are able to run a two-tier justice system. It's through these sorts of things. Now it's sort of an unspoken word that only straight white males will be held to the highest legal standard, and everyone else will be held to a lower standard. You see this a few years ago. There's a ruling. There was a group of recent migrants from a third world shithole that were killing endangered animals in Australia, local Australian animals, killing endangered animals and eating them, using their fur and this sort of stuff. And this was found quite by accident. They were stopped for speeding, and the smell of rotting flesh was and so the policeman checked and found that there was, the back of the car was, the trunk or the boot of the car was full of all these dead bodies. Now, it's meant to be for every one you kill, it's meant to be a month in prison and a $500 fine. So these guys would have been in prison for years after all this. But instead, they were using a white guy to trade some of the stuff, and so it all went into court, and the all the brown people, all the third world brown people were let off with a caution. Only the white guy went to prison for this. So, and so this is the type of two-tier justice that goes on. It's been going on for quite a while. Now, if you look at also the penalties and the prison sentences that women get for committing the same crime as a man. So a man kills his wife, he gets 20 years. A woman kills a husband, she gets 3 years. Now the argument is, well, he was an abusive fascist Nazi that waved swastikas all day long, so he deserved to die, that motherfucker. But whereas the woman, if the man kills a woman, well, it's because he was an oppressor, and then they still use that, and just because he waves swastikas all day, and so they still do the same sort of line of argument, but the man gets 20 years for doing the same thing, where the woman gets 3 years. Similarly, the women get off much earlier on good behaviour than men do. So, if both of them get a 10-year sentence, for example, with good behaviour and this and that, and the next thing, the woman can be out in 2 years, whereas the man will be out in 6 or 7 years, even though he gets all the good behaviour points and so on. So already we see two-tier justice by gender and by race, and that the British are just simply moving to formalise that. But it brings into now stark relief that there is two-tier justice, and only straight white males are held to the proper legal standard. Now, this idea of two-tier or multi-tier everything is really, I mean, it's all part of wokeness and political correctness and affirmative action and diversity, equity, inclusion. It's all baked into that wider pie. The same can be said for straight white males are rigorously interviewed and tested and examined and reference checked when they apply for jobs, but there's close to zero reference checking and so on for minorities or brown people or women. So if a brown person says they've got a PhD in such and such and so on, it's not even checked. It's not even followed up on. Nor are they given simple testing that would indicate whether or not they do or likely would have such a qualification. Whereas white people, now in a government department a little while ago, it was a scandal, but it was quietly kept under wraps. The government department decided they were going to actually seek categorical evidence of the tertiary qualifications that people claim to have. So people who claimed they had degrees or whatever it was, could be post-grad, PhDs, masters, and so on, claiming to have that, then they had to produce evidence of that, like the hard copy and so on. If they couldn't have, for older people who may not still have that sort of stuff, then there would be a formal approach to the university, and their credentials would need to be validated through that. Now, when they started the process, they found that every brown and black person and most of the women didn't have those qualifications. They either had none or in the case they had some sort of local college diploma that they were calling a master's. There were various levels of it. Many of them had no tertiary at all. They had some of them didn't even have a senior high school graduation certificate. But anyway, they realised, the company or the government department, Kamkwanga, realised that if they did rigorously apply this, that most of the people they'd kick out the door were, for not having those credentials, most people they'd kick out the door were women and minorities, brown and black people, Indians in particular. And they thought, well, we can't do this because it'll come across as racist. So they decided to just get rid of the straight white men who had misstated their credentials, but everyone else got a free pass. So it doesn't matter where you go in society, whether it's education, whether it's affirmative action hiring, whether it's affirmative action, giving high school diplomas and degrees. It doesn't matter where you go. There's two-tier situations everywhere you look. And the quicker we can get rid of that, whether it be in the legal system, education system, or hiring or whatever, the quicker we can get rid of that two-tier system, the better it'll be for everybody. You've been fantastic today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.